Good afternoon. If I could ask you all to please rise and join us in the pledge. And Chris, if you're good enough to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. See, we do have a Wednesday's Pet item on our agenda, but I think we're going to wait for former First Selectman Sherry Stenick to show up for that. So that leads us right into some special recognition of the Girl Scouts Gold Award and two young ladies who have earned that award. Would you like to fill us in a little bit on the Gold Award and what's taking place? Yes, please, up to the podium. Just
Thank you very much for having us here today.
If you
Girl
would
Scout.
please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Kathy Carano. My daughters are recent recipients of the Girl Scout Gold Award. I'm also a Girl Scout leader for many years. It's a pleasure to be here. Many of you may not know what the Girl Scout Gold Award is, so it's a really welcome opportunity to share that with you. The Gold Award is the highest and most prestigious award that a Girl Scout can earn. Only 5% of girls ever reach the Gold Award level. So we really appreciate being able to get the word out that there is such a thing as the Gold Award, and so people will be aware of it, and we hope to encourage other girls to continue with Girl Scouting. The mission of Girl Scouts is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. And in order to achieve the Gold Award, it takes hard work, determination, and definitely a lot of perseverance, which are all important attributes of successful leaders. There are prerequisites that a girl needs to complete, and then she can start on the process of the Gold Award of the project. And she needs to submit a very detailed project plan that needs to be approved before she can get started. She needs to think introspectively about her strengths and her skills and her interests, and then she looks to her community and finds something that she can improve on, a problem that she can solve, essentially a way to make the world a better place. The Gold Award project is an individual project, but the girl needs to build a team and work with the team to be truly successful. Her project must uphold all the Girl Scout standards of excellence, which include sustainability and measurability. Caroline Carano is a recent graduate of Fairfield Ludlow High School. While she was a senior at Ludlow, she encouraged middle school students to continue with music in high school. Recognizing the many benefits of music education, she started a club called Music Mentors. She recruited other high school music students to work with her and to walk over to the middle school and work with the 8th grade band. They did this every week, and they built a nice relationship with the other students, helped them to increase their music skills and their musicianship. They formed bonds of friendship, and hopefully they instilled a lifelong love of music. As a result of Caroline's project, there is a record number of 9th grade students in the band program at the high school this year.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. Isabella Carano is a senior this year at Fairfield Ludlow High School. She created a relationship between Ludlow High School and the Caroline House. The Caroline House is a nonprofit organization in Bridgeport that seeks to empower women and children through education. Isabella did a lot of research on the achievement gap, which is the disparity in the rate of learning and academic success among different groups of students. And there are a lot of socioeconomic factors involved in that. And she hoped to diminish that disparity in some way in a local level, in a local community. So she encouraged students from Ludlow High School to go to the Caroline House and tutor in English and math twice a week. And the kids not only helped with English and math, but they became role models to the other kids to encourage them to stay in school, and they could hear the English language being spoken, and a lot of cool stuff went on there. As a result of Isabella's Gold Award project, the teachers in the Bridgeport school that's served by these kids have said that they've reported improved attitudes, increased self-esteem, and a greater willingness to learn among these students after they met with the after working with the high school tutors. So each Gold Award project addresses a community issue and improves lives. And so Isabel and Caroline were very successful on all those accounts.
Wow, fantastic.
Thank you for letting us tell you about it.
Thank you, thank you. Now, the Gold Award is the equivalent of the Eagle Scout Award on the Boy Scout side.
Yeah, everybody seems to know the Eagle Scout, but not that many seem to know the Gold Award. So we would like to get that out there and encourage more girls to do it.
No, well, thank you for coming today and filling us in. Just first off, any comments from my colleagues?
No, I just want to congratulate you, so it's fantastic. Well done.
Yeah, I think it's great. I was a Girl Scout. My girls were Girl Scouts, but I didn't know about the Gold Award. So, and I was familiar with the Eagle Scouts. So I think that's great, and I think encouraging the middle school kids to stick with the band is huge, because so many of the kids start to think maybe it's not cool, or they think they're going to have too much work. And our music program is so phenomenal, and just a great thing to do. And then working with the girls in the city like that, I think that's terrific also. So thank you guys. I see future leaders. It's excellent.
Yeah, and I'd like to build on. I'm very impressed with what you were able to do, and when I see somebody at your age that is reaching out to the community and already making a difference in our community and the larger community, and setting an example for other young men and women, but frankly, setting an example for some adults too, by the way that you're doing that. I think that's just fabulous on that, and I think that's a tremendous program. I want to thank the Girl Scouts and their leaders for providing the opportunity for two of our young citizens to have that. We have proclamations, one for each of you. They go on, and Caroline Carano, this proclamation lists all your accomplishments and then goes on to name this as your day throughout the town of Fairfield. And Isabella, proclamation also lists all your accomplishment and goes on to list it as your day throughout the town of Fairfield. So this doesn't happen too often, so I'd encourage you both to stay up as late as you can tonight so your day lasts as long as possible. Can we present these to you personally? Come on up. And please, we need you in the photo too. Why don't I get on the side? Why don't you stand right here? And let's see. Smell?
Yeah.
Right there. Go. All right, thank you. Hold it on that. Please come on over.
Over there?
You need you in
Okay.
the photo too. All right. All right.
Okay, a little closer together. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to take one more. Very nice. Perfect.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
I didn't notice they were out.
I don't suspect anybody else.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Let's go back to item 3 on the agenda, which is Wednesday's Pet, and introduce former First Selectman Sherry Stenick. And Sherry, what do we have today?
We have an older dog, Bogey, and Bogey's 12, roughly 12, and he's a mixed breed.
Okay.
I asked what mixed breed, and I was told 957. So the coat looks a little bit like a shepherd mix, so there's probably a little shepherd in there too. He's very calm, but he doesn't apparently like other dogs. So if he needs to go in a home that doesn't currently have a dog. He's available right now at 211 One Rod Highway, Richard White Way, and hope somebody will come pick him up.
Wanting to be an only child.
He wants to be an only child. He's nice and calm.
Sherry, thank you very much, and thank you for your efforts on behalf of our pet guests that stay with us for a little while before finding a permanent home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is item 5.
Yes.
Which is to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments, and let's take these one at a time, if that's okay. Sure. First up is the Board of Health, and it's D. Morax, unaffiliated, 618 Duck Farm Road, for a term of 11/15 to 11/19 to fill a vacancy by Carolyn Shea, whose term expired. Is Ms. Marox here? Dr. Marox here? No. All right. May I have a motion to accept?
No, I'll make a motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
No, she looked great.
She did.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with her. I
Yeah.
was very impressed with her background, her credentials, and frankly, her ability to volunteer and want to serve our town. So I think that would be great.
Good resume.
Yep.
All right. Any comments from the public? All right. Back to the board. Any further comments before we vote?
I'm all set.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next up, Greater Bridgeport Transit Authority. This requires RTM approval. Michael Mears, Republican, 44 Bay Edge Court, for a term of 11/12 through 11/16. And this is to fill a vacancy for Sam Kudis, who resigned. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
All right. Is Sam here? Oh, Mike's here, sorry. Sam is your replacement. Here, you're hiding behind the podium, Mike.
Good to see you.
All right. Any comments from my colleagues?
Well, thanks for serving,
Yeah.
Mike.
Appreciate
thank
him
you for,
stepping up, bringing a lot to the table.
Thank you for, it's an honor to actually do it, man, so I appreciate the nomination.
All right.
You're
Mike,
gonna get on the board.
we had a chance to serve together on a pension board, and your contributions there were very valuable, so I appreciate
thank you.
you signing up for another tour someplace else, since your job change didn't allow you to continue on the pension board.
That's right, that was unfortunate, that was a good board.
But thank you for taking the steps to find another place for the town.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking.
Any other comments?
Nope.
All right. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Aye. All right. Mike, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, see you guys soon.
All right, next up, Holland Hill Building Committee, Phil Dwyer, Democrat from 2607 Congress Street. There were some questions that came up last time, and we had a chance to do some research. I'd just like to kind of fill in some answers on those, and then explain my actions in a minute, since I brought Phil back for this. One, we had a question on the town charter. Item C here.
Mike, can you speak up a little? We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. I will try and do that.
Thank you.
It says, for a single office required for appointed office, except as otherwise provided in sections 10.7, 10.9, 10.10, and 10.13 of this charter, no person shall be eligible to hold an appointed town office, including membership in any permanent appointed board or commission, who is at the same time an elected RTM member, an elected or appointed town officer, an elected state official, or a member of the elected board or commission or permanent appointed board or commission. For purposes of this paragraph, the term town officer does not include justices of the peace or constables, but does include members of the Board of Education. In reviewing this with a town attorney, it was pointed out to me that this clause references permanent appointed boards or commissions, and at this point we're talking about a building committee, which is an ad hoc or temporary committee. So this doesn't quite apply in this specific case. Oh, that one goes there. Back in here. And then went back and looked, and in our history, it was pointed out that Jim Lee served on the Roger Ludlow Middle School Building Committee, and John Mateos served on the Ludlow Middle School Building Committee, and both were on the Board of Ed during part of their terms on that. We also found that as part of certain building committees, we've had members of the Board of Ed to include people like Kathy Albin, Pam Iacona, John Confortino, Donna Carnell, Phil Dwyer, and though they served on the Special Projects Building Committee, the Special Projects Standing Building Committee, which has been assigned certain projects like Sherman School, as an example. We then looked in state statute, and we really couldn't find much. But I do thank the town attorney for searching. And in CGS 10-232, it goes on to say, notwithstanding the provisions of any special act to the contrary, no member of the Board of Education shall be employed for compensation by the board of which he or she is a member in any position in the school system. And if any member of such board is employed contrary to the provisions, the office to which he or she elected or appointed shall become vacant. It then goes on to say, no provision of this section may be construed to prohibit any member of the Board of Education from serving as a member of any school building committee established by a town or regional school district to undertake a school building project as defined in Section 10-282. And then our town attorney then went on to reach all the way back to 1990 in our building committee guidelines. And as much as this isn't an ordinance or charter item or state statute, it was guidelines written up by the town, and I'm just going to read an excerpt for this under paragraph 201, establishment of building committees. It says, members of other town agencies and departments, boards, commissions, or committees, which do not have any approval authority in the project implementation, may serve on building committees, especially if they bring a special technical knowledge or expertise. It says, members of town agencies which have approval authority on a particular project may participate in a building committee, but only as observers. And I do want to thank our town attorney for going all the way back to 1990 to look at this. And it's obviously there's some conflicting information in this. But as much as this isn't a town ordinance, and it isn't our town charter, the guidance here about saying you shouldn't have somebody from a committee that has approval authority sitting on the building committee kind of makes sense. So that's a long way of saying that, and as much as I placed Mr. Dwyer's name on the agenda here, I will not be forwarding it, because I think that we, in our charter, we tend to write that we should follow the guidelines in this book. If you look in the charters that we've agreed to in other past charters, we reference this specific book of guidelines. I'm not sure we've all read the entire book. It's pretty thick. But our town attorney did go back at least to find this, and at least to my way of thinking, this is a reasonable guideline, that you shouldn't be serving on a board that is reviewed by a board, another board that you serve on. So as much as it's possible under state statute and town charter, and we have some instances of it in the past, I think that people didn't take time to go back and read this. And I don't mean to fault anybody. This goes back to 1990, so it's a pretty long way back. But I think this is a reasonable guideline going forward, and I would suggest we follow it. It's my understanding, since this is not an ordinance, this is not a charter item, that if this board were to vote that we would follow a different guideline, that would be within our possibility. But this just seems like a reasonable guideline to me, and I would use that as an explanation to both of you why I would choose not to move forward with Phil's nomination at this time.
Well, I actually went back and read that same thing earlier today, and did read some of the stuff that was written back in 2007, so I concur with you that it's better that we don't have any conflict of person who's on the committee who might be approving money and looking at other parts of it, so.
You okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I came here, and this is one of those examples where I wish we could have a dialogue, and maybe the town attorney can reach out to me in the future, because I came here with different options as to what to do, and one of the things I was going to recommend is putting Phil Dwyer on as possibly an ex officio member, or some other person from the Board of Education to go on as an ex officio member, and they should discuss that amongst themselves. And this committee, although I know that we talked about it not being permanent, it is one of those committees which is of utmost importance to the town. It is going to be for a minimum of 3 years, it looks like, from start to finish on this. So it's going to be one of those committees which may not have the classification of permanent, but I think it falls under the guidelines of, this is a committee which we should go on along those lines. while we're talking about it, I also came to the conclusion that I'd like to add a couple more people to the committee, and I don't have any names to put forward today, but I'd like us to think about perhaps moving towards, and I know that we have Tom Dabrowski on from the First Selectman's office, and we added Joe Michelangelo from Public Works. It may make sense to put someone from finance on there. If we can find someone, maybe somebody from engineering on there as well, to try to add a little more expertise, and we are pulling from the town bodies right now to do that. So I think if that can work, and again, I don't have any names to add, it was just something I was kicking around, because we're pulling from different town bodies now.
Yeah. Let's look at, I think, two things, and I think your point about adding people makes sense. I think first of all, let's get this through the RTM and see who, if the RTM approves the people we've proposed. So it makes sense to wait for that in my mind. However, my goal was to put out a press release in the next 2 weeks out to the public, asking for volunteers on Holland Hill. I know we had some interest out there, because I see this initial phase as really focused on getting our September 1st deadline in, because we've got certain accomplishments to do by then. Again, the money still has to be approved by the RTM, and the building committee still has to be approved by the RTM. But looking at getting some additional members on that would come back before us and then back to the RTM, so we can start to fill in some of the additional members we need as part of that. So, yes, please think about some folks that you'd like to have as part of that. But I think that will give us an opportunity to fill this out more like a normal building committee. But this group, as was laid out in Dr. Title's guidance and initial timeline to us, lets the Holland Hill parents know that we're moving right away to get this moving, and doing everything we can to hit that September 1st deadline.
Can I go back to, there was some question I raised about Joe Michelangelo as well on there. Would he be under any charter stipulation as well, because he is an appointed member? I know he's not elected, but I guess he's appointed by the First Selectman to be the Superintendent of Public Works. Does that fall in any sort of class?
Again, in terms of the charter, this really is a temporary or ad hoc committee, so it doesn't fall under the charter.
Okay.
There were no restrictions in the state guidelines, and even within the 1990 building committee guidelines, we didn't find any restrictions there.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to have his expertise on there, and I talked to Mr. Quinn earlier tonight, and he talked about the importance of making sure we have a full table so that we can get information flowing, and we have enough to reach quorum at the meetings. So we would need to go with 5, and I think we should probably look seriously to add at least 2 more members so that we know that we have the quorum.
Well, I think that's just what we laid out, which
Right.
is we'll get a press release out to make sure it's aware to everybody. There are some, I know there's some very interested people within the Holland Hill School District that want to be part of this. I'm sure you all have gotten some inquiries, I've gotten some.
I have.
And I think we want to reach out, make sure they know they were considered, and then we can decide, again, based on what happens at the RTM meeting, whether we add 3, 4, or whatever additionally to this group.
Okay.
So unless there's anything else, we'll take a pass on that. Next up, for the Land Acquisition Commission, Adam Y. Goodman, Democrat, 54 Meadow Court, from a term from 11/15 to 11/19 to fill a vacancy by Stuart Manley, whose term expired. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make
Make a motion?
A second?
Yep.
All right. Is Adam here?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Yes, sorry. Front row, sorry. Keep looking past you. All right, and thank you for joining us today. Any comments from my colleagues?
Again, good resume. Thanks for serving the town.
Yep, we had a brief conversation, but again, appreciate your coming forward to do this, and it looks like you'll be bringing a lot to the table.
And Adam, I enjoyed our conversation, and same thing. I look forward to your expertise helping out the town here, and thank you very much for volunteering on this. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adam, congratulations. All right, and thank you for serving. Next up, for the Land Acquisition Committee, Alan Levin, unaffiliated, from 245 Umpqua Road for a term of 11/15 to 11/19 to fill a vacancy for Wendy Radovic, whose term expired. May I have a motion to accept?
Motion.
Second? All right, thank you. So, thank you for joining us today. Any comments from my colleagues?
Alan's been an outstanding member of Fairfield for a long time here, and I'm excited to have him on this committee.
Appreciate your stepping forward and giving of your time.
Yeah.
Well, and both two things. One, thank you for your service, and great to have a Marine still working for us here. I know enough not to call you a former Marine.
No, X.
All right, any comments from the public? Back to the board, are we ready to vote?
Yep.
All in fine?
Okay.
All right, thank you. And congratulations, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Laurie, thank you all. Mike, thank you.
All right, next up, from the Director of Human Services to hear the 2015 Human Services highlights from the Director of Human Services. Ms. Giegengack, will you please step to the podium and fill us in?
Thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity to share with you the highlights of the Department of Human Services. So I have 10 highlights, so you can keep track as I go fast through these. I don't want to keep you, but we've had a wonderful year, and very appreciative of the resources that the town has provided the department to grow. So first of all, I will say, number one, we have a new senior center name and signage, the Bigelow Center for Senior Activities. The dedication and renaming ceremony was held on July 31st, with distinguished guests and local dignitaries invited. With the approval of the Board of Selectmen and at the request of the Human Services Commission, the center was renamed in honor of Cindy Bigelow's personal and financial contributions over the past 27 years to the Fairfield Senior Center. That is top of the charts right there. Number two, our membership increased to more than 2,500 members. The most active programs continue to be our exercise and fitness programs. The number of these health and wellness classes expanded by 30%, with new additions to Zumba, weight training, dance aerobics, just to mention a few. Pickleball continues to be our primary mover-shaker group. They are there every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday until 5 p.m., and I have to kick them out of the gym because they just love playing, which is great. The second most popular activity is in the dining hall for our food services. Morning coffee and lunch cafe are very popular. This special entertainment that we have to bring volunteers and special performers together to create the lunch program more enjoyable for the seniors. It's a fun and a welcoming atmosphere. The Fairfield Police Benevolent Union hosted 160 seniors for a holiday luncheon. The seniors, in appreciation for all that the police and the fire do for them, hosted our first fall picnic. So we had picnic with hot dogs, and the seniors were quite entertaining to the police officers. They wanted their signatures so that they could know who to go to if they got stopped by anybody. So, the summer and fall programming was our best ever, with day trips to museums, coastal restaurants, Thimble Islands, and several trips to the CATE, the Catherine Hepburn Museum in Old Saybrook. Our expanded offerings, such as Spanish, watercolor painting, a writing workshop, poets roundtable, and lectures in the arts and sciences were very popular. Health and wellness programs with Fairfield University included cardio screenings, hearing clinics, and memory and depression screenings. We had comedian talks, antique appraisal days, veterans breakfasts, and we had the state archaeologist visit, all enhanced our daytime and expanded evening and weekend hour programs. The first outdoor holiday tree lighting was magical, with entertainment by the Ludlow High School musicians and luminaires lighting our sidewalks. Our Shoveling for Seniors program, which is an intergenerational program, matched 39 students with 48 senior homeowners last winter. In 2015, our senior bus transportation provided more than 14,000 rides to over 200 Fairfield seniors, Monday through Friday, to their medical appointments, shopping, library, barber, and hair salons, and of course to the Bigelow Senior Center. 3, a new lunch program was piloted with an enhanced restaurant-style meal. The average number of seniors was 55 per day, with an increase of 20% from the last year. Volunteers prepared and served the meal, bringing many new people into the senior center of all ages and backgrounds. Civic and community groups helped to serve lunch, including the Kiwanis Club and the National Charity League. Number 4, our renovations continue. The Fairfield Rotary Foundation awarded a $1,000 grant to help defray the cost of renovating the dining hall into a multimedia center with the purchase of a new projector. This will enable the dining hall to serve as a comfortable location for lectures with video and PowerPoint presentations to a large number of people. We can accommodate 170 people seated at tables in the dining hall. Phase 1 of our patio plan was completed. Thanks to the engineering department and Public Works, we have a walkway that was created around the gazebo with handicap access. Phase 2 will include a simple outdoor patio this summer with fundraising, donate a brick accents around edging the walkway. Number 5, the process of pursuing Senior Center National Accreditation through the National Council of Aging began in the fall. A committee of the Human Services Commission and staff organized the plan to process the self-assessment program. I've been here 3 years now, and seems like it's the right time now. I know enough, and we haven't settled into a routine too much, so we are eager and ready to make changes and look at ourselves. Number 6, social services provided professional social work services to adults of all ages. These services included helping more than 200 households apply for Connecticut state heating assistance. The energy program yielded over $70,000 to income-eligible households. It's a payment directly to their vendors. Operation Fuel, a new program, granted $5,000 to social services to help Fairfield residents with additional heating and energy assistance. Caregivers and bereavement support groups gave residents a place to share and receive emotional support and a stronger sense of connection to the community after a trauma and personal tragedy, working with a professional social services facilitator. The Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs collaborated with Social Services and the Senior Center to provide monthly office hours for veterans and their families to receive information and services. A trained volunteer from Southwest Connecticut Area Agency on Aging provided Medicare open enrollment assistance with many hours of individual appointments to help beneficiaries understand their drug insurance and related benefit programs. Number 7, the United Way of Coastal Fairfield County awarded a $5,000 grant called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. The grant acknowledges the ALICE household, that is, the asset-limited, income-restricted, constrained, employed families. These are families with children who are at risk for homelessness and who struggle to manage the high cost of housing in Fairfield County. This grant inspired our first financial education program with a volunteer speaker to share financial and budgeting education to families helped by social services. Number 8, the first mental health breakfast was held in October to invited area social service professionals, including the school social work and guidance staff and local mental health providers. The purpose of this breakfast was to promote provider awareness of resources and community services to families. Number 9, the December holiday donations exceeded $17,000, an increase of $1,000 from last year, from individuals, schools, and community groups, including the Near and Far Aid, Salvation Army, Goodwill, and the Fairfield Rotary, to help families in need. And last but not least, number 10, we celebrated with gratitude and love our 2015 Employee of the Year, Janet Mirando, with an abundance of goodwill from staff, volunteers, seniors, commission and board members, and community residents who acknowledge Janet as the true one and only go-to person, and in my words, the heart and soul of the Human Services Department at the Bigelow Center. Thank you for your kind attention. Questions?
Terry, thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I would say that.
Thank you.
No, thank you, and looking forward to working with you on that accreditation.
Thank you.
Terry, just one thing, on the accreditation, how many other senior centers in Connecticut have accreditation?
There are 9 other senior centers in Connecticut that have the accreditation. There are none in Fairfield County at this point, so we're aiming to be the first.
All right, congratulations, great goal, and again, fantastic job. Really appreciate everything that you've brought to the senior center, how special you've made it for our seniors down there. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, next up, the Fairfield Woods Middle School Roof Building Committee charge. To hear, consider, and approve a charge for the Fairfield Woods Middle School Roof Building Committee. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
I'll second it.
All right, any comments? I believe you have it in your packet.
Yep. I don't have any comments.
I didn't see it. It looked fine.
Okay, if I can make a motion for one amendment. The acronym for this is way too long. So with your permission, I'd like to shorten it from FWMSRBC to FWRBC, Fairfield Woods Roof Building Committee. So I will make that motion if I can get a second.
I'll second it.
That abbreviation is about in 5 or 6 different places within the charge. And with your permission, I'd like to ask Jen to make that change throughout on a revised document. If you can get that out to us, that would be good. I think that was the only one I had at this point. All right. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. Any further comments before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. So that's what- All right, next up. Next is item 8. This is from the First Selectman. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the First Selectman. Resolved that the Special Project Standing Building Committee shall serve as the Fairfield Woods Middle School Roof Building Committee for the purpose of performing roof replacements at Fairfield Woods Middle School. We have a motion to accept
I'll make a motion.
and a second. All right, thank you. I did contact Mr. Rich Special, who is chair of the Special Projects Committee, and asked him if he and his team would be willing to undertake this project, and he said they would. So we have their kind of acceptance and willingness to do the workload on this. They have done the Mill River roof. They actually, if you go back a few years, were involved in the first phase 1 of the Sherman School project, and there are a few other projects along those lines they've done. So, any further comments?
Nope.
Any comments from the public? All right, back to the board. We may want to take a look at, the Special Projects Group was established by the Board of Selectmen back a few years. We may want to take a look at that at some point, because there seems to be a conflict between having a Board of Ed member on that and per our guidelines.
Okay.
All right, so we're dealing with 2 conflicting components, but they're both guidelines. And I think primarily comes back to this board, so we may want to revisit that at some point, just to clear up that conflict. So with that, are we ready to vote? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next up, from the Director of Public Works, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Whereas federal monies are available under the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program administered by the State of Connecticut Department of Housing pursuant to Public Law 93-383 as amended, and whereas pursuant to Chapter 127C and Part 6 of Chapter 130 of Connecticut General Statutes, the Commissioner of Housing is authorized to disperse such federal monies to local municipalities. And whereas it is desirable and in the public interest that the town of Fairfield accept the grant, accept from the state a grant in a sum not to exceed $300,000 in order to undertake a Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Tranche 2 project, South Benson Stormwater Pump Station and Drainage Improvement Study, and to execute an assistance agreement therefore should one be offered. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Fairfield is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites of state assistance imposed by Part 6 of Chapter 130 of the Connecticut General Statutes, and that the acceptance by the town of Fairfield of a Disaster Recovery Community Development Block Grant to be used for the South Benson Storm Water Pump Station and Drainage Improvement Study in an amount not to exceed $300,000 is hereby approved, and further resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to accept said grant, and further resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to execute any and all necessary documents to secure said grant. May I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Michelangelo, would you fill us in a bit on this?
Thank you. Joe Michelangelo, Director of Public Works. With me is Laura Pooley, Senior Civil Engineer from our office, who did most of the work on this effort. As First Selectman said, this is a Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Relief, and we've received, since Storm Sandy, we received 8 previous grants, totaling approximately $6.5 million. So with these 3, there would be 11 in total. And the first one is $300,000 for a stormwater pump station. And a couple of purposes for this. One of the things we had to do during Storm Sandy, when Long Island Sound invaded Fairfield, both crashing over the dunes and from South Pine Creek and Ash Creek, one of the things we were forced to do was rent portable generators, strategically 12-inch diameter generators, strategically place them in selected locations to evacuate the water out of Fairfield, because it's tide dependent, it's not going to go out on its own. So in our planning process, one of the things we were evaluating afterwards is a permanent pump station, that instead of renting one, you build this infrastructure somewhere in the beach area at a low spot, almost like a sump pump in your basement. The water runs to it, you pump it out in one general direction. As we were planning that, there's some added benefits. Not only could it be used for storms, it could be used for our whole storm drainage system. So our whole storm drainage system, which is basically dead flat and doesn't flow towards Long Island Sound probably 40% of the time. When the tide's up, we're out of the storm drainage business. So this could supplement our normal storm drainage system anyway. We'd have to chase the pipe back and rework it. So we applied for this grant recently, and about 4 weeks ago we were awarded the grant. The Community Development Block Grants from Sandy, like I said, we've been quite successful in it, but we're near the end of the program, so there's these 3, and hopefully we're still scratching and crawling for more, but the money's running out. But this is, we think, a very beneficial project. We were awarded it. The state is moving these along, so we just got awarded it a couple weeks ago, and the first question they said is, when are you going to accept it? But we have our process the quickest way possible, and that's why we're here today.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a couple questions. One, I know we've wanted to do this for a while. I talked to some members of the Flood and Erosion Committee, and I support this, so let's go there. How much is it actually going to cost to do?
Okay, well, an actual number, and we've put ballpark price of about $5 million, and this isn't for the actual construction. But once again, that's not a flushed out number. And the way I'm basing that number is, the largest pump we have in town is our pump at our wastewater treatment plant, which could pump at the maximum 25 million gallons per day. And just the size and scale of that, that's probably about a $5 million facility. And in concept, this isn't really too much different in theory. The way that works is all our sewers from town drain to a point on One Rod Highway at about elevation minus 25, and then it's pumped to Long Island Sound. That's how our sewers work. That's how our storm sewers will work, essentially the same.
Right.
That's how we put that concept together.
Is there going to be, federal and state money available for the $5 million project, or is that something the town is going to do?
Well, that's well in the future, but yeah, ideally, we'll seek all and every grants for that, but that's not something we can predict at this time.
All right, and you said earlier that we've gotten about $11 million in block grants.
No,
What'd you say?
about $6.5 million.
6.5.
We've got this. We got 8 projects. With these 3, this will make it 11.
Yeah. Okay. So it was $11 million.
No,
I guess
11 projects.
11 projects. I gotcha.
Counting these.
All right. So how much of, and this is just from my own knowledge, how much of these projects have we received? It's just studies.
Well, there's some rebuilding of infrastructure, and these are very, I won't say cumbersome, but there's a lot of, with any federal grant, there's a lot of paperwork involved, but we're getting some real improvements, and one of them, our storm line that goes out to Long Island Sound where it crosses Fairfield Beach Road, got damaged. That's going to be repaired. We're building a dike around our wastewater treatment plant. We are installing a microgrid around our wastewater treatment plant.
And just to
Fire
be clear,
training center.
those two together that Joe just mentioned total about $5 million.
Yep.
So that was the biggest bulk of the aid.
$750,000 for Penfield, and a couple of them that we recently approved was the beach resiliency grants. That's a planning grant, and the other one was similar to the last one. It's a flood resistance or resilience along the Ash Creek area. So some of them, the bulk of the money is for hard construction. I'd say probably around 80% is for hard construction.
Yeah, and I was just looking at today's agenda, and I'm looking at $700,000 worth of grants for planning purposes, and I'm like, when do we actually do the work?
Yeah.
And how much does the work actually cost us to do? So, I mean, that was one of my concerns, when you mentioned, all these other projects, that's what made me. So you think about 80% is hard construction, the rest is all studies? We're at an 80-20 split?
Correct, just, I'd say probably around, it might be 3/4, but somewhere around there. And once again, the $5.25 million that directly at the wastewater treatment plant is the bulk of it, plus the Penfield one and our sewer repair. So either 75 or 80%.
One of the challenges is that when you're going for the bigger dollar grants for the implementation, those are very competitive. So you really want a professionally done plan and study with a reputation of the different consultants and engineers that we get on board to do that, which basically puts you in a better position to qualify for the, to use your term, hard dollars.
Right.
With the construction. You can't just go saying we'll take the $8 million for construction now. And especially, as Joe mentioned, as some of this money is running out, and given the state of the federal government and the state government, it is very competitive in terms of what we go through for that. So this puts us in the best chance to get that. There's some federal money coming through. We talked about in the last day or so the money in the program from the U.S. Corps of Engineers that Congressman Himes had initially publicized a year or so back.
Correct. There's different pots of money, including that one, about $300,000. DEP has recently awarded some money. Army Corps would be a major player in any of these things too. So, there's a number of possibilities, and just like, if you told me, 2 years ago that, that these community development block grants would be our these, after FEMA, this is our second most successful grant thing, and we've tried a whole bunch of them. This was sort of, something that took us by surprise. You never know where the source will come from.
And Joe, you and your team have done a great job of looking in every nook and cranny for a number of these grants.
Thank you.
And have been very successful in terms of bringing them back home. So thank you very much for your work on that.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Any final comments before we vote? All in favor? Joe, thank you. I think we've got you around for a little bit here. From the Director of Public Works, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the Town of Fairfield to expend up to $300,000 to fund a community development block grant disaster recovery Tranche 2 project entitled South Benson Stormwater Pump Station and Drainage Improvement Study. 100% of said project cost to be reimbursed by a federally funded disaster recovery community development block grant. May I have a motion to accept? And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And Joe, could you just, that sounds awfully familiar to what I just read. Can you fill us in on that?
Okay, I believe this is just the splitting up of the two pieces. Once again, I was reading my notes, but I believe this is the same piece, and we split it up into two pieces because only half of it goes forward to the other boards. So this is the same project I talked about.
Okay. So, back to your earlier point, this is not $600,000. This is $300,000.
I hear you, when you add the dike number in there.
Yes.
That's what I was saying.
Just want to clarify that this is, we don't want to double count that in terms of what we're doing.
And I actually do want to talk about this one here. And the way I understand it, I mean, this is going to go over by the Sandcastle Playground. That's the proposal, right?
Well, we put that in theory, and once again, we'd build this thing. Like I said, I picked an elevation of -25. So the sandcastle is probably the lowest spot, but if you're at minus 25, it doesn't matter where you are. We'd want to locate it in most likely in town property. So whether it's one of the Penfield lots or the sandcastle, if you're at minus 25, you could rework the whole drainage system, and it's not just the beach area that's flat. Old Post Road, the underpasses to the railroad, Fairfield Theater, which is elevation 5 or whatever, could all go to that minus 25 elevation wherever we locate it.
So one of my conversations I had about this, and I thought that was a great idea, would be to look to house a bathroom near the pump station if we're building a new facility there, because the porta potty, which is a rental unit there, I have young kids, bringing them to the Sandcastle playground and having no spot to have the kids go to the bathroom and change diapers in there. And listen, that's a family park. It's probably our most active park in there. I think we should look to take an opportunity to try to tie that in if we are going to be putting a structure there in the future. We've already highlighted the total number is going to be of this project up around $5 million. I think we should keep in the back of our mind the possibility of housing a lavatory there if we're going to be doing construction and trenching and piping moving forward. So I'd just like to put that out there as something I'd like to.
Yeah, good thought. Good thought.
When you talk about like reworking the drains, what does that involve?
Well, that's another major effort. You'd have to, our pipes are dead flat in this whole.
So you're talking about digging up pipes and.
Correct. Yep. So, and once again, you start with the trunk line, the major interceptor, and then you branch off. So it's not an all in one fell swoop thing, but it is a way to the eventual goal.
Right.
One of the hardest things for me to get used to a few years back was to realize at high tide, so many of our drainage pipes from the beach here are underwater.
Right.
So they're not working at that point, and it's only at low tide. When Storm Sandy came in and raised the water level in the sound 2 or 3 feet, that meant those pipes were underwater, low tide and high tide, until the water receded, which is one of the things that made it so hard to drain the beach area. Anything else? Any further comments? Are we ready to
Let's
vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, item 11, also from the Director of Public Works. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Whereas federal monies are available under the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program, administered by the State of Connecticut Department of Housing pursuant to Public Law 93-383. You guys are going to make me read this whole thing, aren't you?
No, I'm happy to make an amendment to waive the reading.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
I would have done that last time.
Yeah, I
All right.
thought you wanted us to have your.
Well, we got it on the record once. Basically, for those of you at home, this is basically all the same words except the different description of the project. And the dollar amount here is $100,000. And this is the entitled Resiliency for Downtown Fairfield Using Green Infrastructure, an amount not to exceed $100,000 that is hereby approved. The wording for most of it, with the exception of those description terms, is the same. Mr. Mike, may I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Michelangelo, would you please fill us in?
Sure. Just an overview. As civil engineers, when we try to predict how much runoff, drainage will be generated from a site, we look at the site for a number of categories. And I'll use, let's say, my residential lot as an example, quarter-acre lot, 2-car wide driveway, probably 1,000 square foot footprint. I'd say 80% of my lot is grass, 20% is impervious cover. That gives like a coefficient of runoff probably around like 0.4, just in general terms. When we look at the downtown area, which has paved streets, train station lots, buildings with hard surfaces, not much grass downtown. If you look at the whole downtown area and you do crunch your numbers, well, that has a coefficient of runoff about 0.95, pretty close to the 100%. So every drop of water that falls basically gets run off. It doesn't get absorbed into the ground. And not only do we get the quantity there, we get the peak. So not only do we get a large quantity of water, we get it all at once in our storm drainage system. So that's intuitively what we know. And intuitively, if we change the equation some, if we create infiltration, if we create rain gardens, if we try to soften the downtown area, pervious pavements, all kinds of techniques. So conceptually, we know that's what we should do. But to try to quantify it and say, well, how much do we need to do? Do an overview of the downtown area. You know, is it going to be a drop in the bucket? What do we really need to do to change the equation in the downtown area? To not just reduce our quantity, but also the peak. That's what this study does. It's not a simple thing to change the amount of water that comes down from the downtown area. This study hopefully addresses some of those concerns that we could use as a roadmap for the whole area for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, forever.
And this will tie into what you're doing.
Correct. So if we decrease the quantity and the peak, the pipes that I mentioned that we have to run to the pump station, instead of being 36 inch diameter, maybe they could be 24. Or instead of running my every road, we could, get by with only what we need.
And it goes back to two things I think I've learned over time. One is that downtown Fairfield was really built on a swamp, so it's one of the lowest points in this area. So that's why water tends to accumulate there. And second, as Joe mentioned, we've done a lot of building, so we've added in a lot of paving that increases the runoff, so it's not absorbed in the ground at any point. But the other piece is that we've also, as we've improved our sewer and drainage systems and separated them to make sure we have separate flows, take that increased runoff and now run it through just the drainage system, which it didn't go through before. Our drainage system wasn't designed to handle this much load, so you start to see a lot more flooding in downtown and a lot more backups in some other places. So it's literally a structural problem, and this is one of the steps that Joe has outlined to help us solve that. All right, any further comments? Any comments from the public? Oh, go ahead.
The town's putting no money forward on this?
Correct.
whatsoever, for any of these projects, right?
Correct.
It's all state, federal grant
Yes.
money?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have federal money distributed by
To
the
the
state.
states, yeah.
Any comments from the public? Back to the board. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Aye. Next up, Director of Public Works. This one requires Board of Finance and RTM approval and is a duplicate of the one above, but this is the resolution that will go to the RTM. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that the First Selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the Town of Fairfield to expend up to $100,000 to fund a community development block grant disaster recovery tranche 2 project entitled Resiliency for Downtown Fairfield using green infrastructure. 100% of said project cost to be reimbursed by a federally funded disaster recovery community block grant. May I have a motion to accept?
Make a motion?
A second?
I'll second it.
Joe, anything to add to this?
Nope. Same,
All right.
same as the last one.
Any further comment on this?
Nope.
From the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Joe, you are a popular guy. From the Director of Public Works, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Whereas federal monies are available under the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program, administered by the State of Connecticut Department of Housing pursuant to Public Law 93-383 as amended, and,
Have a good motion, so you don't have to read it?
thank you,
Okay.
a second,
I'll second it.
please. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This is the same wording, except the dollar amount for this project is $300,000. And this is being used to create a Pine Creek dike elevation plan. Again, in the amount not to exceed $300,000. It is from the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. Mr. Michelangelo?
Okay. The first two that we went over were recently awarded within the last 4 weeks or so. We got them on this agenda as quick as possible. This one is slightly different. This one was awarded in the summer of 2015, and the original intention, we were working with the Army Corps of Engineers, their office up in Massachusetts, and they started some work, and they prepared a small 20-page study that sort of outlined the problems in the area. And one of the things we're going to go forward with is a project in conjunction with them. So the Army Corps of Engineers, the federal government was going to undertake this project, and the town obtained this grant, which, as I said, although it's federal money, it's distributed to the state. So the good thing about this money is it's state money. So we were originally crafted the project where we had the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was a local share. We were going to use this for the local share. As the Army Corps of Engineers went further and further into the project and see what would have to be determined for this project, unfortunately, the project was much larger than they envisioned. It wasn't just the front part of the existing dike, which faces Long Island Sound and both South Pine Creek or Pine Creek Avenue and Old Dam Road. To adequately protect it, it would have to wrap around basically the fields and even the Salt Meadow condo, and that's where the deal, so to speak, fell apart. So at that time, and I think we were even on the Board of Selectmen agenda, and we said, we withdrew it. It didn't work out at that time. Now with this grant, just like the other ones, the Department of Housing is asking us to either accept this grant or forego this grant. I think it's in our best interest to accept this grant. We are still working with the Army Corps of Engineers. We still have contact with Connecticut DEP. The other grant that the first selectman mentioned for the Congressman Himes' office. So we still think we could, once again, this won't cover the whole study. We'd most likely partner with another agency. This will be the local share. We haven't carved out the exact details of what that would be, but I think it's in our best interest to accept this grant, and I think the other half of the equation will fall into place.
Just to clarify, and I appreciate the explanation of the background. If we accept this, are we obligated to spend it?
No, we are not. Not in any way.
I'm sorry, any questions from my colleagues?
I had a couple. One, I understand that the Army Corps has been doing a lot of work on the dike over the last couple of years. Do you know how much money they've put into it?
They've put their own money.
Right.
And, I would just be guessing, but I know that they put a lot of man-hours into this project, so whatever their internal payroll is, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, but they've added rocks and stuff like that. Here's one of my thoughts.
No, they haven't done any physical work out there.
Oh, I see. Okay. That was one of the areas which didn't end up getting flooded when Hurricane Sandy came through. And I understand there are some weak spots, and I understand that there are some low-lying areas along the dike. Would or has there been any conversations about trying to move this money or this study to areas which were affected by it, or is this only dike related on South Pine, South Benson, South Pine Creek?
No, and the community development block grants do have some flexibility to them. So, one of the in going through, the alternative to extending the dike and wrapping it around behind Salt Meadow and there is to continue this way. Continue into the beach area proper. And Army Corps has, expressed some, interest in that. So, I don't think, these grants do have some flexibility to it. So I think, it could be expanded to go eastward.
I also think to clarify, and for that question, is that the dike came within inches of being breached at the high level of the storm. So the concern is, if the winds had shifted, that might have happened. There are literally 1,000 homes or more on the other side that didn't flood because this dike is there. In fact, showing up a few days after Storm Sandy down there, you couldn't tell there was a hurricane at all because the lawns look so good. However, the concern is with sea levels rising, if the winds had been right, if Sandy had been more than a 70-year storm, this could really have damaged a lot more homes and seriously hurt them. And once the water gets behind the dike, it's much harder for it to get out. So they would have been underwater for an extended period of time within that. So I think that's one of the reasons for targeting this. And it's something that we'll get our arms around and fix specifically There are certainly a lot more areas of the beach area, as you're pointing out, that will need help.
Yeah, your point's well taken. Again, I think there's areas which were flooded, which weren't breached. And as Joe mentioned earlier, the Army Corps has spent many man-hours, and my father-in-law does have a house along the dike, and I have seen lots of new rocks there, which they did shore up. And there are sections along South Pine Creek Road, which I do think are low, and I would support the study to go forward on that, just to have it. But again, I'm more concerned about the areas which were completely flooded, which we haven't addressed yet, versus shoring up something which didn't fail. And again, the whole area has to be looked at without question.
And it's also looking at I think the opportunity here is that it is a piece, a component, that this can actually do a significant amount of work on to make that better. When you start to look at the larger area, it's much bigger, much more significant. $300,000 doesn't accomplish anything in and of itself, and the implementation costs are much bigger along that side. The implementation costs here, just to raise this foot or two, or whatever the plan would come back and say, is going to be significant, and we'll need some significant financial aid to do that. But that keeps this neighborhood safe.
Would the town have to pay for the recommendations of the study, or would the Army Corps come in and pay for it?
Yeah, once again, that has not been determined. So whatever recommendations come from this, yeah, we'd have to, we have to seek any and all funding alternatives to get something constructed. And just like, one of the things, then, Tom Dabrowski and I were at a presentation at the Scandinavian Club, probably in late spring, early summer, and one of the things that the people there, they want definitive information. So we came there with preliminary information. We're telling them concepts and stuff, but in order for people to make educated decisions, whether I want this or go away, I don't want this, detailed studies are needed for people to, to properly decide whether it's in their best interest or not.
Wait, well, is there a plan in place? Are we still applying for more grants to cover the houses which were actually flooded in town?
We continue to seek all different kinds of grants. And yet, so, one of the, every and all, and, one of the, there are other, we keep applying for them, and we've applied for, National Fish and Wildlife ones for, $20 million. We applied for the one recently, the National Disaster Resiliency Competition, which OPM ran, and Bridgeport ended up getting an award. We were right in the thick of that. So, we're in, anything that's out there, we put our best effort forward.
Yeah. And as we go through that, I got $7 million to help in grants, kind of recommitted to Fairfield Beach to help folks raise their homes in that time. So that's a big dollar investment. That's a big dollar investment from FEMA, and that's a significant investment in our beach area to help mitigate funding going forward. Any of the larger issues, and certainly our Flood and Erosion Control Board, drafted up some thoughts and some plans, but in looking at that, just to do a significant engineered plan for that, to bring in professionals to do that, would take significant money. The initiative that is underway is from the Army Corps of Engineers. Congressman Himes brought us together about 18 months ago to introduce it to Fairfield County, but for Fairfield and New Haven counties, it's $3 million worth of planning, which we'd have to match to a certain degree to get in. So there is a certain complexity in that, because the question is, does every town participate in that? What if they don't? How does that work? So there's some complexities in terms of getting the funding for the planning of that. The implementation of the flood mitigation points would be huge, in the same way that even for Fairfield, that would be a huge grant that we would need, an exceptional magnitude. So we don't know where that money is or exactly where that would come from. But what we found over time is that if we can get a plan in place, if the money comes up, we're closer to getting that money than other communities that haven't done the plan. So this is in part setting us up to make sure we're as prepared as we can when funding sources like that come away, so we can be at the front of the line, not the end of the line. But Joe, any more comments on your part? Any more comments or questions from the board? Did we go to the
Well,
public yet?
just to
Go
clarify,
ahead.
so this is $300,000, it's the federal money.
Correct.
But, and then does the town have to put in another 300,000?
No, there's no match to it, and one of
Okay.
the things about it is because...
I just thought you said something about a match.
Yeah, well,
In
it counts as our local match towards another
Got it.
federal
Okay.
agency.
All right.
All right, and there are some other programs that the federal government runs where they are looking for significant matches from the local community.
Right.
This is not one of those, but you
I just wanted to
you
clarify.
no doubt
Yeah.
have read about some of those, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
Makes
that,
sense.
Joe, thank you very much. Are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 14, Director of Public Works requires Board of Finance and RTM approval to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that the First Selectman is
Make a
hereby...
motion to waive the reading.
All right, thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this is the part of this that goes to the Board of Finance and RTM. Joe, is there anything more to add to that?
No, there's not.
Any questions from our board? Any comments from the public? Back to our board, ready to vote?
Yep.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You still need to move in second. You moved in second waiving it,
Ah, thank you.
so.
May I have a motion to accept this?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. Now, thank you very much, Jen. Any further discussion on our part? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you again for saving me the reading. Thank you. All right, Joe, thank you. Next up, item 15, discussion of the townwide strategic plan. Just wanted to offer a few thoughts on this, not to decide anything today. The thought would be that we would take the next month and look at that, and maybe come back and revisit this at our next meeting. What I was going to propose is, we have $100,000 in the budget to hire a consultant to help us with this plan. What I was going to propose is we jointly select a team of, or group of, or committee of 8, maybe 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. Bring them together, ask them as a charge to identify an RFQ, request for qualifications, go out and select a consultant to work with, and with that consultant, plan out how we put together a strategic plan that gets our whole community involved and really makes this something that we're all a part of. The thought was, this is really not a political process at all, so an even representation on both sides, I think, would be reflective of a bipartisan process. And just want to get that started. Don't have any names today. I would suggest that that's something we come back with at the first meeting in March.
Okay.
And there's not a strict deadline. It could be the first or second meeting in March, so we have time to discuss this if we needed to. But the idea is to like to get this started as soon thereafter as potentially we could.
Is there a possibility we can put together almost like an advisory panel to help draft the charge?
Well, I think that if we put this group together, then very definitely I expect them to reach out to different stakeholders in the community. We've got a wide range of tremendously talented people. So even if they're not on the steering committee per se, because they don't have the time to do that, reaching out to them, this is to get input back in terms of what should be on the RFQ, what should be covered in our strategic plan, I think would be an excellent idea. So I think that we need this, in my mind, the steering committee would basically be helping pick the consultant and then helping them understand our community to make sure that we have any resources we need and that we answer all the right questions.
So it wouldn't be a regular committee like we just appointed here, where we appoint the members and then we give them a charge? We would have the members go on and they would develop the charge? Or we can talk about that, or?
I think there are two things. We can develop a charge for them. The RFQ would be something they would literally send out to get responses back from consultants in this area. And there are a number of planning organizations that do this kind of work. And they would help steer that, but with the consultant, decide the approach on how to prepare and develop that plan and how to get community involvement. This is, at least in my mind, it's not something you do in the back room.
Right.
This is something you do with public hearings and surveying people and getting feedback a lot from the public. So to make it a very involved process from that standpoint. I don't mean involved as in complex, just involved as in engaged.
Right.
All right, and, for what it's worth, my thought would be we wouldn't necessarily pick a lot of elected officials to be on this.
Right.
The idea would be to reach out to communities. Certainly, as part of the plan, they would reach out and get feedback from elected officials.
Right.
But elected officials, by their nature, are involved in the process and have their feedback on an ongoing basis. This is a way to reach out to the community and do that. So I wanted to bring that up to get either any feedback from you or just to get your thinking on that,
Yep.
so that perhaps we can continue this discussion at our next meeting.
No, I'd like to do that. One of my thoughts is I'd really like to see us include the universities in this stage. They have incredible think tanks there with their students, and this might be a project that they might want to work on. And we've got two great universities here. That was a thought I've been having about the strategic plan, which I think is good. I think it's a great project as well. And the other thing is I've had members of the town reach out to me about trying to get this, and everybody throws ideas at you in emails about including. So I like the idea of putting together a core group of 8, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans.
Think of it as a steering committee, just so somebody can provide some direction to that. I think there are professionals out there that do this. So
Yep.
when you look at the Board of Ed, they went out and hired a professional to help them with their strategic plan. When you go to the library, they went out and hired a professional. Our economic development group is reaching out to a professional to help them with their long-range plan. So I'm looking at this as a comparable step. And in one sense, we have a number of building blocks in place because some of our departments have gone ahead and done this type of thing. So I'm not looking at this as necessarily an attempt to micromanage down to that level, but to identify who we want to be in 5 to 10 years, what resources we need to get there, and what some of the obstacles are in terms of getting there. So that type of thing.
Makes sense.
We're ready for March.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next up, from the tax collectors. Do we have any tax information for that?
I didn't see any.
Oh, it might be where,
No, I think that's
This
always
was just
good.
my stuff.
All right.
oh.
Seeing no tax collector information, we'll pass on that one. And we move next to the town attorney, item 17, for a private executive session on pending litigation.
Before we go there, I don't want Joe to hang out. Can I just quickly throw something on new business so he doesn't have to wait for this?
Okay?
Real quick.
Go.
Okay. I'd like to ask the Director of Public Works if he would reach out to the state DOT to see if you can look into the safety issue which was reported to us about exit 24 on I-95. There seems to be a lot of backup, especially during rush hour, which is leaking on to I-95. And I believe exit 24 used to be 2 lanes at the bottom, so you can go left and you can go right, and the DOT meshed it down to 1. Could we look into that from the town level? That's it.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to move into private executive session?
Make a motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, if I could ask you to turn off the volume of the camera. All right, thank you. I have a motion to come back into public session.
Make the motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're back in public session. I want to note that while in private executive session, no motions were made and no votes were taken. Since we're back in public session, may I have a motion to accept the attorney's recommendation?
Make motion.
A second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Lottie. Moving on, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business that shall properly come before this meeting.
I have a little punch list, if I can
Okay.
run through it real quick.
Go.
Okay. I already did the exit 24. Can we get an update from the Parks and Recs Commission at our next meeting? I've received a lot of emails regarding the fee increases which have gone on for both leagues and marina fees, and I understand that that happens through the rec board, but I think it'd be good to notify the public about what's coming down and what's in the pike for that. So I'd like to get an, on the record, on TV, update from Parks and Rec.
Very good.
Okay, so that's one. And further, moving on, I wouldn't mind having an update from departments throughout, just to get an update on what they're doing with other departments as well. So keep that in there. And we can,
Realize that we did one with Human Services today. That was part of what Terry Giegengak was here doing.
I recognize that, and I appreciate that. Can we get an update on where we are at with our department head searches? Right now, I think we're 3 department heads down. Where are we at as far as the search goes and a hiring process?
We're currently interviewing people for the purchasing director. We're currently interviewing people for human resources director, and we're working with Conan Resnick on a search for the IT director, because that's a more technical position. We're using their expertise to help us with that.
Is there any timeline, you think, or is there any pressing matter?
We're moving on those as quickly as possible, but the overriding criteria is to get the right person.
Let's see.
So how do you put that out there? Or is it published? Or, I mean, how do you put out, like, that you're looking for somebody for human resources? Where do you publish it or
Yeah, we already
advertise?
did. There's,
Yeah.
our human resources department has a full program for that. We do that for all types of jobs. So
Right.
that's why when we went for conservation director, we got 30, 40.
So they go out and then you interview them? Or
Well,
they come in,
we
or
review
how's
the
that?
applications, decide which ones to interview. Very often, we might do phone interviews first and then go back and do in-person interviews. We typically have a small group that will kind of target who the top candidates are, and we do a more formal interview with those folks. Based on the type of job, for the deputy fire chief and the fire chief, there was a very technical component in testing, and we actually hired an outside resource to help us with that, because that was public safety and extremely important.
Okay.
In the purchase director, we're literally down to the interview phase. We're about halfway through that. In the human resources director, we're have just maybe we are about halfway through on that too, based on the interviews that we're doing. So we're kind of both those. We're kind of at the end phase of that.
And who sits on that? Like, who besides you is part of the
Bob,
like small groups? Or
based on who? Bob
Yeah.
Mayer, Mary Carol Merles, before she left, was part of that group.
But now that we're looking for her, who would be?
Bob and myself are the 2 primary folks.
Did we agree, and I couldn't remember, and I don't want to go, did we agree at the beginning of the meeting that we were going to give the RTM authority to put a liaison on for, a liaison for the Holland Hill Building Committee?
We don't have to. The RTM has that authority.
Okay.
We put liaisons on Riverfield, on
Yeah.
Osborne Hill, on Penfield.
So
the
they can just
RTMs
go ahead and do that.
Well, what they typically do is notify me if they want. Specifically, the moderator would call me, say, here's who we'd like.
Okay.
I would let the building committee chair know that it's official, and so they're part of that, so we don't have multiple people coming up. So that's worked pretty smoothly. It's been a little bit informal, but we haven't had any issues with it. So
Yeah.
everybody kind of welcomes the communication.
I just want to make sure I was clear on that.
I think what we learned from our research earlier is that where in the past, I think Chad Stewart was the last one who was an RTM member who was on a building committee, that go back a few years, the RTM officially requested to have RTM members on building committees, though we never actually got anybody to volunteer to do that, so it did. But they would also be in an approval capacity. So based on the guideline we kind of refound recently, it would be inappropriate for an RTM member to be a member of the building committee, though a liaison.
Right.
As they have been serving on pretty much every one, it's been fine.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was the one I wanted to be clear of. Last week meeting, we briefly talked about the Town Facilities Commission, and I wanted to get it, is that essentially a dead committee now, or is it not active, or what role does that committee play in
Yeah.
now?
At the moment, it's not active, and I think we're searching for how to redefine its role to make it effective.
Okay.
I had a couple thoughts about that, because I was looking, I did go back, I found that stuff from 1990, and then in 2007, I think there was a study done, I forget now
It wasn't a
exactly what
study,
the
that was a
person-
group that came out after the Tomlinson Building Project.
Okay,
That was a group that was put together to kind of review.
to make some recommendations how to,
About what
like,
had
make
happened
the
with-
building
with
processes
Tomlinson.
go
Yes.
smoother or whatever. But they talked a little bit about that commission in there as well, and it just sounds like if we could do a good job, if we could put that committee together with really qualified people, as it kind of says in what I read, with people with engineering, finance, architecture, actual building experience, contractor experience, if we had a committee, like, it sounded like, the way I read it, it seemed like that committee could kind of help to populate all these other committees, and maybe make the job a little easier, because they would probably have a pool of people that they could pull from.
Yeah, structurally, we're already doing that. I mean, if you look at each of the committees, there's a member of the TFC on each of those committees.
Right, but I've looked back at they haven't met. I mean, they met once last year to like decide who was going to be the chairman, and then there were like no other meetings, and the same thing. So there's been nothing, they haven't been doing anything, so it seems like there might be a way to utilize them.
And I think that's what I said, when we're basically looking for a better defined mission for them in terms of where to get them involved and when.
Right.
We've got them involved in the building committees, so they're part of those committees. So they have the ability to discuss that or occasionally get updates from that, which they've done from time to time. The challenge is, if you look at the way the description of that was, they're supposed to meet with every building committee every month.
Right, but I guess, but maybe it could be, maybe it just needs to be tweaked where the person who's from their committee reports back to the, because if somebody from the committee is on each other committee, building committee, then they could report back. It's kind of the way I read it, but.
And that's what we've talked about, but that's not really working effectively currently.
Right.
Well, I'm happy to work with you to help find a solution, because I think they're a great check and balance, and it adds another layer of expertise and oversight, which I think never hurts. And I know that it does slow things down to a small degree, but sometimes it's worth having that extra oversight. So that's something I would definitely like to work with and see if we can move forward. And then is there, and I'll ask again, is there any way we can get the backup data mailed to us? I know it got emailed to me on Friday. Can we get it like put in the mail? Because, I mean, it's a lot to print out at home. This week it was 49 pages. And if we can get it mailed on Friday or
At least what you have. If you have
like
the
what you
bulk of it,
have.
because you can make notes on
Yeah.
it, come in more prepared.
I think Kathleen called you per your request to say, do you want to come by and pick it up? If I remember from last meeting, I thought you said you would come by.
Yeah, I
and
didn't get
pick
the call. I actually sent an email asking whether she mailed it. And then it came out after, I got the email like right at the close of business on Friday. So I wasn't sure if there was anything available or not
Well, I think
last
she-
Friday.
Yeah, she asked if you wanted. If you want us to print it out every Friday for you, we'll do that. But I think she just wanted to know if you were going to stop by. If you were, we print it out.
Well, I think if we print it out Friday, then it wouldn't need to be printed out again. We just need to be responsible and bring it back with us. But
Yep.
it would be helpful. And then, obviously, sometimes things are going to come in later, which is
Yeah,
not a big deal. But if
some-
we had the bulk of it,
Some things will, but the bulk of
Yeah.
it is generally available. You're correct.
yeah,
Okay, so we'll print it out on every Friday.
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Now,
Would be helpful to me.
Yeah.
I'm, like more of a paper
if I can't
person
pick it up, can we
myself.
mail it or?
If you want it mailed,
yeah.
not sure when you'll get it. If
Yeah,
Right.
maybe I can just pick it up from Kathleen's house.
that
Okay.
would
She's
be the
3 doors
simplest.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, okay. And one final thing.
She can put it in her mailbox, I'll put it in
um,
mine.
One final thing. Who's your pick for the Super Bowl?
Oh, I'm going with Carolina.
Carolina. Okay.
I really like Peyton,
Chalk.
but I'm betting on Carolina.
Okay.
If I were going to bet.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm actually rooting for Peyton Manning for the first time. I'm excited to have his career hopefully come to an end the way John Elway did, and we can start watching fast-paced football again instead of him stand behind the line and draw out each play with an audible and waste 42 seconds before he says hike. So I hope he goes out with a win like John Elway, and there's a new quarterback in Denver.
he
And the
retires?
speed of football, and maybe we can get other teams on TV besides the Broncos.
So you're going to break the tie?
I'm not feeling strong one way or the other. I just hope it's a good game because I hate when it's just a blowout one way or the other.
All right. Well, now that we picked the Super Bowl winner, in a politically correct manner, I should
right.
point out. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll do that.
All in favor? Second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now,